settle in and listen to our mixtape and know the music vanishes. Enjoy your butternut sandwiches.
All right, we're here with comedian Myq Kaplan. If you wouldn't mind, would you go ahead and take a minute to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Sure. Hi, my name is Myq Kaplan. I'm a comedian. What if that's all I said? The exact
That'd
same
be-
stuff that you said.
Yeah.
I live in New York City. I started out doing comedy in Boston around 2002. I love it, and I do a podcast of my own called Broccoli and Ice Cream. I've done comedy specials and various other comedy jobs, and just love doing comedy and talking to people about comedy and also other things. So feel free to ask questions about comedy or things that aren't comedy, and I'm an expert on very few of them.
That's awesome. So yeah, we usually like to start at the beginning and just kind of get into what drew you into the world of comedy. Like, was there anything in particular that like you saw on TV that was just like I want to do that? Like, what kind of pushed you that direction?
Sure. I will say that it was an accident. Growing up, I didn't really know much about stand-up. I knew that there was stand-up comedy. Like when I guess I don't even know the age, but maybe 8 or 9 or something. I grew up in New Jersey. My family, like we went away for like a little vacation. I lived in New Jersey. We went to somewhere in maybe the Catskills, and I saw Henny Youngman perform,
Okay.
who, has since stopped living. But at the time he was alive when I saw him. And I played the violin growing up. That was my parents were music teachers, and since I was 4, played the violin. And so my family was always like, "Oh, Henny Youngman, he's a comedian who brings a violin on stage and plays a few notes and then tells some jokes. Is like, you could do that." And I was like, I guess I could do that. It seems like he's already doing that, but there's room for it now. There's a comedian friend of mine named Isabel Hagen who mixes playing the viola with doing comedy, and she's great. But anyway, I was a little kid, I didn't really resonate with the, I don't know, 80-something-year-old ish or thereabouts Henny Youngman, the Borscht Belt vaudeville era comedian. Kids like jokes. I like jokes. He had some jokes. But I remember there was a magician who closed out the show, and I remember more of what the magician did than Henny Youngman. Though I did meet him and shook his hand, and I think we bought a book that he was selling called "Take My Jokes, Please," and had it signed. And now I don't remember where it is. It's probably gone. But that's my first like live comedy experience. Then I remember, seeing various specials throughout my teenage years of like, I knew about Seinfeld. Like, I watched sitcoms and SNL at times. And so I remember seeing like a Dana Carvey special and a Norm Macdonald special. I think the first hour special that I saw was Paul Reiser. And I think it came out around 1991 when I was 13. And it was called something like 8.5 blocks from home or 6.5 blocks from home. I think it's 8.5, but I could be wrong. And I just loved it. I just loved it so much. And so Paul Reiser was my first favorite comedian. And I went out and got his book Couplehood when it came out. And I don't want to just do comedy material on you, but this is the truth and also a thing that I sometimes say on stage. But like the book Couplehood is, kind of all about how Paul Reiser is a grown man who loves his wife. And his comedy was also all about how he was a grown man who loves his wife. And the TV show Mad About You that he was the star of for many years was all about how he was a grown man and he loved his wife. And somehow that resonated with my 13-year-old self, and who did not as yet have a wife, nor was I a grown man. But I was like, oh, this guy's so funny. And even then, though, I wasn't like, I want to do that, because it seemed like comedy was something that not just adults did, but famous adults. It really seemed like if I had to guess, which I would have gotten wrong at the time, I would have thought, how do you get into stand-up comedy? Well, first you become a TV star or a movie star, and then they'll let you do comedy. Like all the people that I knew who did comedy were on SNL or had their own sitcom. So I'm like, I got the the causation backwards.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that somehow maybe you get to be on TV because you started out doing stand-up. But in the meantime, I was, playing the violin, not super enjoying it, until I went to this summer camp in my teenage years, and it was like a creative and performing arts camp. And I had a friend who played the guitar, and one day I just kind of like picked up his guitar and was like noodling around on it. And because of all the violin skills that I had developed, over the past decade or more, I was like able to easily like, kind of pick up the ability to play the guitar. And I loved it because I didn't have to do it. I wasn't made to do it. Wasn't forced to.
Yeah.
And I just started like teaching myself songs and chords. And then I started writing my own songs and then sharing them with my friends. And like some of the songs were like funny and some of them were not supposed to be funny, but probably also were. And I was like, I loved They Might Be Giants. So I feel like probably, my earliest songs had a They Might Be
They get
Giantsy
brought up on
vibe.
this show.
Yeah.
Love They
That
Might Be
checks out.
Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful. And so, I got all their albums and I love them. But yeah, so I also listened to like Adam Sandler's albums. And it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, so I started writing songs that were funny, and people like Adam Sandler. I'm like, well, he also wrote songs that were funny. I don't think my songs were particularly like his, but I got to college and I was like, that was my first dream, was to be a singer-songwriter. And like, again, some of it, like it wasn't specifically comedy, but some of the songs were funny. And so in my senior year of college, when I turned 21, that was the first time that I was like, I think I can start like trying to really, now I can get into bars. I can get into venues that I couldn't get into before. Now I can really kick my my songwriter career into high gear now that I can go perform places. And I went to a bunch of music open mics, and I just, it was pre-Google. This is like, around the year 2000. And I remember just, asking Jeeves or however I found whatever search engine on the internet existed. I like searched for Boston clubs because I was in school in the Boston area and I was looking for clubs, and some dance clubs came up, some music clubs came up, and a place called the Comedy Studio, which was a comedy club, came up. And I literally I'd never been to a comedy. Oh, I'd been to one comedy club. I'd been to Caroline's the night of my senior prom. My senior prom was in New Jersey, went into Manhattan right afterwards. Like we all got bussed in, and I don't remember the show at all. I've like since done shows like those that sometimes they're at like 3 a.m. because they want to, make sure that kids aren't going off and doing what they would do.
Creating more kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Kids making kids. And so like, how about kids look at this kidding and seeing, so, I don't remember the show at all. I remember I did see Anthony Clark in the lobby. I was like, that's a guy I've seen on TV. Our night is a success. But other than that, I'd never, chosen to go to a comedy show other than that. But I found the Comedy Studio when I was looking for places to perform my music, and I called them up. And Rick Jenkins, who was the owner, he answered and was like, "Oh yeah, I can give you 5 minutes." And I was like, 5 minutes? I guess that's not going to be time to do a lot of songs. But I showed up on a Thursday night, and I don't think they had an open mic at the time, but it was like a showcase. Most people doing 5 or 7 minutes, and I just played a couple songs that were like a minute or two long, and talked a little bit in between. And I talked. Like when I first got up there, and my very first time on that stage, I followed Jonathan Katz, from Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I'd seen him on Comedy Central, like, earlier that day, maybe, like he was a famous comedy person, and he was just there. He lived in the area, and he would come by and do sets. And he went on and he performed a super funny set that ended with a comedic song. And so now I'm going to go on for my first time following. And I think I said something like, it's my first time here. I'm here to do comedic songs, and I'm following the most famous person in the room who just did a comedic song. And so I think it's going to go well. And, I feel like I wasn't trying to be, it was legitimately what I
just call an audible like that. I guess this is happening right now. Yeah.
And it, I can see how it was endearing, and people laughed, and like I wasn't trying, like I legitimately wasn't trying to make them laugh by saying it, but that is when the switch flipped, and I was like, oh, you can make people laugh by saying things. Like I knew that other people could do it. I knew that famous people could do it. But I did not know that I knew that I could do it with a song. I knew that my songs were like funny with my friends. But that was the first time I was like, oh, I made people laugh just by saying things like, what do I even need this guitar for? And so over the course of the next couple of years, I gradually weaned myself off of needing the guitar. Like I still love playing the guitar. I still love writing music. But in my comedy, my goal became, I would start going to open mics, and I would do 4 minutes of jokes and end with a 1-minute song. And eventually, like when I had 5 minutes of material that I thought was good, I was like, well, I don't even need to bring the guitar tonight. I'm doing 5 minutes. And then I had a 10-minute set. I'm like, I need the guitar again. And then eventually, I would only need it in a 20-minute set or a 30. Or when I got booked to do an hour for the first time, I was like, I have 45 minutes of jokes. I'm going to need to play 15 minutes of songs. And so that was my route to comedy, was via music. They say the quickest way to a lover's heart is through the stomach. And I'd say the most circuitous route to a comedy career is to try to be a singer-songwriter and then realize it's a lot easier without roadies to not bring any equipment with you. So sometimes I just say that, I got into comedy because it was easier than carrying a guitar.
So you mentioned, obviously wanted to become a singer-songwriter. Like what style of music would you play? Would it have been kind of along the, like They Might Be Giants kind of route?
Yeah,
Like
it
with them
was
being kind of an influence?
yeah, I would say so my two favorites at the time were They Might Be Giants and Ani DeFranco. So if you can imagine a
Okay.
perfect melding of those two. I mean, it was folky, it was, acoustic. It was, I mean, when I was performing comedy songs, it was like mainly just they were kind of jokes in song form. But yeah, my mom loves me, loves my comedy, loves my music. And recently, I'd say like sometime in the past 5 to 10 years, started listening to Taylor Swift. And the first time she listened to Taylor Swift, she said, her music reminds me of yours. And I don't know all the data points that my mom is a music teacher. She's an
Okay.
expert in music. She studied music. So I I have a blurb. So my comedy is a combination. I would say it is like They Might Be Giants, Ani DeFranco, and Taylor Swift. Those are the three touchstones. But yeah, they're just like,
All right.
fun, silly, jokey, folky songs.
All right. That's a very interesting comparison that you're. I mean, like you said, she's the expert. She sees it, then go with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think she really enjoys Taylor Swift, and she really enjoys me. So there you are.
Yeah.
By a misuse of the transitive property, I am Taylor Swift.
we see a lot of her around these parts where I'm at. So
Oh, sure.
yeah, yeah. So you've been featured on a lot of the late night talk show circuit. You've done Letterman, Conan, The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson, even as far back as Arsenio Hall and Sally Jesse Raphael.
Wow,
Um,
you really went deep with your research here.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna credit Jay on that one. Jay looked that part up. So, um, but yeah, of those, do you have like a favorite performance that you did, and where would you say most people would probably recognize you from on any of those?
well, I certainly can't speak for most people, but I know myself from all of them. Um, I'll say a few things because I don't know that any. I mean, they're all my favorites. Like whichever one's happening right now is my favorite. Like this show right now is my favorite. Thank you for having me.
We're gonna put a
The
quote on there.
Yeah,
Myq Kaplan. This show's my favorite. Yep.
blurb it up.
Hell yeah.
Um, and the very first late night show that I did on network television was The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. And so that was a rare gem of we didn't know when I set out to do it, that it was going to be such a limited window, such a limited edition of a credit.
Yeah.
But I loved Conan. I love Conan a ton. I mean, of all the people that have been the host of the Tonight Show, I'm thrilled that I got to be on Conan's Tonight Show. So that was a very special, television debut for me. I enjoyed the set I did. I think then I did Craig Ferguson's show, and that was a lot of fun. I did that a couple times. And then getting to do Letterman was probably the one that I tried to get on the longest. So I might have been, in some ways the most grateful for that opportunity. I think I first submitted to it in probably 2004, and I got to be on it for the first time in 2011.
Oh, wow.
And I love, and that includes like sending many tapes to the booker, and he would almost always get back to me and like give me feedback on my performances. And it was very thankful that he did that. And he was a comedian, so he tried to do that. It was Eddie Brill. He tried to do that for a lot of comedians, because he's like, I know what it's like. You send it in and sometimes you don't hear anything. And so I try to let people know, and including like I auditioned for him live in 2000. I think it was 2008. And actually, this is one of my earliest stand-up like sets that's still on my YouTube page, because it was at the time literally the best 7-minute set that I'd ever had. Like every other time I'd auditioned for him or sent him a tape, he had notes, of jokes he liked more than jokes. He's like, these ones are okay. These ones would be good for the show. These ones wouldn't, or, your performance needs, like, you need to stop rushing or different things. And after that set, he just said, phenomenal. And I was like, wow, I'm doing the show. And 3 years later, there I was. And so honestly, it was funny because I did the Tonight Show in 2009. And I remember after that aired, I saw him, it was December 2009. In early 2010, I ran into him at a show, and he was like, hey, I saw your Tonight Show set. He's like, you could have done a lot of those jokes on Letterman. I was like, yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you for 6 years. But he's like, now he's like, let me know when you have a set together that you'd like to do on Letterman. And so from that point, it was about 1.5 years that I worked on, got him a set. And then it was just a little bit of waiting. One special set I did that was on a show that doesn't exist anymore. It was W. Kamau Bell's Totally Biased.
Yeah.
I did warm up for that show for a good chunk of time, and I loved it. I love Kamau. I think he's an incredible human and comedian. And so being a part of that show at all was wonderful. And then I think it might have even been the very last episode, or one of the last episodes, that I got to do a bit of my stand-up on, which was a lot of fun. So that I have a lot of rare additions. And if look out, book me on your show. I did Conan's Tonight Show, and it was canceled a few months later. I did Kamau's show, and then it was gone. I did Letterman a few times, and then he retired. And I did James Corden in 2017 or 18, and he's gone now. So
I'm seeing a little bit of a parallel with our show. Like you go on late night shows and they get canceled. We mention celebrities and they die shortly after.
Oh, well, don't mention me.
We won't until after we've finished recording. So
perfect. Yeah, don't tell anyone who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just blur your face for this whole video.
Oh yeah, make my voice like
yeah.
Like I'm a witness in a case.
We'll put you in silhouette, and
back. The mob is after me. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, all of those opportunities were fantastic. After Conan moved to TBS, I got to do it several times. There's like one set on there on Conan's TBS show is a joke. Basically, the 5-minute set is mostly one joke that is my closing joke from my special that's on Amazon, Small, Dork, and Handsome. And it's about time travel and killing Hitler. And it's, at the time, I mean, and still, it's a joke that was one of the jokes that I'm like really super proud of. Like I the same way that I love whatever show I'm on right now. This is my favorite show right now. Like the joke, my favorite joke is the one that I'm working on right now. The one that's like exciting to be experimenting on and discovering things about and telling night after night to audiences now, and continuing to hone and curate and, just sort of Prune and Blossom. So that was a joke that I loved. And so that's a set that if you want it, I think it's still online and available. But I love my James Corden set as well. That was a super fun one. That's also like a longer bit from my album No Kidding about talking to a psychic on my podcast. And just I've loved, any opportunity to do comedy in front of people who want me to do it is one that I love. I will say for a lot of the past, decade and a half, I would say people who came out to see me at live shows, there's probably like two places that they have known me from most. One is Last Comic Standing, which I did in 2010. Which, it was the first time that millions and millions of people got to watch me every week for, a few months. And then also the Keith and the Girl podcast, which I started doing in 2008 when I moved to New York and found out what a podcast was. And I think I've been on their show. It's still going. They've been going for just about 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
Like they were one of the first podcasts.
Yeah.
And I think I've been on I think they've done close. I want to say over 2,500 shows. Like somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 shows for sure. And I think I've been on 100 or more of them.
Jeez.
So, and they have, they're incredible. They have a massive fan base around the world. So it's almost always when I do like a week at a comedy club, like there's a few people that are like, I've seen you since Last Comic Standing, which makes sense because that's a national television show. And then there's always a few people that are like, I first heard you on Keith and the Girl. I'm like, that's, incredible. Like an incredible testament to the power of a podcast fan base.
Yeah. So you mentioned Last Comic Standing. What was that experience like?
Feel very fortunate that I was able to, like any competition in the arts, like there is no real good way to judge one amazing artist from another. I mean, the people. Here's some people. If I can remember, I should look. I wish I could go back, and it must be on their Wikipedia page. I'm going to go back and look for sure. But I think there were 40 of us in the semifinals. And of those, the 40 semifinalists, here's some of them who didn't advance to the finals: Shane Moss, Nikki Glazer, Joe List. Like just incredible. Like
Didn't
Nikki now
advance on there.
Yeah, that's correct. They didn't make it out of the semifinals like I did. I mean, like they're all incredible.
Yeah.
Like Nikki's new HBO or Max special, I think I read was like record breaking. And I don't know exactly what that means, but it makes sense. They're incredible. In the finals with me, I think I was in the top 5. People who didn't make it to the top 5 included Rachel Feinstein, who just has a new Netflix special out now, I think her second one, and Laurie Kilmartin, who is one of the best that there's ever been, and James Adomian, incredible, and Moranzio Vance, and I think Lil Rel Howery, I forget if he was in the finals or if he also was one of the ones who didn't make it to the finals, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
His career is gigantic, as deserving as he is deserving of it. In the top 5 of us, Myq DiStefano sadly died the year after we filmed it, but it was like an honor and a pleasure to get to become his friend and tour together. We did afterwards. The top 5 of us did about 65 theater shows all together.
Man.
From like September to January or so, and then I think he died in February. And Tommy Johnigan came in second. Felipe Esparza won Comedy Beasts, and Roy Wood Jr. came in third. And he is he's one of my favorite. All of these people are there. So getting to do that
quite the
show,
lineup.
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, like it was a really. I think I was really lucky to get to do it that season as well. For a few reasons, because I think the show had started in like 2000, 2 or so, thereabouts, give or take a year. And it was like a full-on reality show in the beginning. You know, it was like they lived in a house together and they had wacky challenges that weren't about doing stand-up. Like some of them were kind of stand-up related, like heckle fights. Like they had to heckle each other and come back. And it was, and you know, and some people like made really fun comedy and really fun art out of that. But like I remember, I think one season they had to go to like an IKEA or something and put together props to do a prop, like, and fine if you're a prop comedian, but you know, stand-ups who didn't classically work with props. So our season, I think they'd taken a break. I actually auditioned a few times. In 2008, they aired one of my jokes in a segment of Don't Do This.
Oh no.
It was me and I think Carmen Lynch and Gina Brion, who are also both, you know, they both got, I think recently, new hour specials that are super funny. They're hilarious. And they were hilarious working comedians at the time. And I also had just started being like a full-time working comedian. And a fortunate thing, I don't know if this will be of interest to anyone but me, but in 2008, so 2008 is the year that the three of us had told jokes that were quote unquote anti-baby. Like, and the segment was like, and so we were all like buzzed off when we told these baby jokes, and they're like, yeah, what you don't want to do in a top 10 list of like, here's what not to do. Don't tell jokes about hating babies. And I would, 10 years later or 8 years later, release an album of all about not wanting children. I don't hate them. I love them. They're cute. They're great. Have them if you want them. But so that was 2008, and they aired me for like, you know, literally 5 seconds, probably less than 10 seconds. And this is I don't know what the legality is now, but at the time, I wasn't in a union like SAG-AFTRA when the show was airing. And if you're not in the union, then they don't have to pay you because anyone can line up and just be, you know, made fun of by the judges and then, you know, forgotten by history. But if you were in the union, if you are a working comedian who'd been on TV before, then they did have to pay you because you're a professional and they're using your professional work on television. I was in a weird position because I had just done Comedy Central's Live at Gotham. Literally, I had filmed it, I think the same month that I first auditioned for Last Comic Standing. And so by the time it aired, my Comedy Central thing had aired, and I didn't have to join the union to be on TV once. But if I was going to be on TV twice doing comedy, then I did have to join the union. And so I'm like, Last Comic Standing, me telling one joke for 5 seconds was my second time on TV that I talked to the union. I was like, if I join the union now, do they have to pay me for this? And they said yes. And they got, I think it took a while, but I joined the union, which means I paid them, I think more than I got paid, but eventually I would have had to do that. So anyway, that was like, I'm glad that it happened exactly that way, because then after that season where they were, you know, part of what they were doing was making fun of comedians for telling jokes out of context. I always had this idea. I always had this idea. I was born having this idea.
Yeah.
Ever since I saw like what they were doing on that show in that season, I was like, you could like, they took Gina's joke, they took Carmen's joke, and they framed it in the context of like, look at these ridiculous people trying to succeed. I'm like, they are succeeding, and this context is weird. You could I was like, I would love to see a supercut of like George Carlin and other like all of your everyone's favorite comedians, right?
Yeah.
And take their jokes out of context or having them make funny faces or saying weird things and being like, can you believe that guy said this? I think that would like, try again, back to the drawing board. But so after 2008, they didn't air the show. It didn't film in 2009. 2010, they brought it back. And the whole deal with it, they were giving it a makeover where they're like, this year we just care about the stand-up. We're not going to have them live in a house. We're not going to have them doing like other wacky non-stand-up things. We just want to have a stand-up competition. And that, I think, benefited us all. Everyone who appeared on the show, like, you know, if it didn't go well, then
I'd say that's the
just
season I remember the most personally.
amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, and it was cool. They brought in for judges, you know, Natasha Leggero and Andy Kindler and
Yeah.
Greg Giraldo, who are all super funny and super well-respected, you know, comedy beings.
Yeah.
And so it was also fortunate for me because I'd met all of them variously. Natasha literally just the week before at South by Southwest. And I'd worked with Andy and we had a good relationship. And I remember when I did my 2 minutes of jokes in front of the three of them, literally an empty room, a comedy club, just those three comedians judging. And I did my 2 minutes and Andy said something like, "Myq, I've seen you before and I liked you. And I like you now too. So my vote is yes." I was like, thank goodness. And then I was like, yeah, but pretty fun. Good way to good television. And then Natasha was like, "You look familiar. Like, did you come to the open call yesterday?" I was like, "Oh no, we met at a festival for comedy last week." She's like, "Oh yes, that's right. Of course, you're very funny. I also vote yes." And then Greg Giraldo was like, "Oh good, I don't even have to. We got two, so it doesn't even matter." And then we talked a little more, and then I said something that Greg laughed at, and he's like, okay, I say yes also. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I also yes. So that was really cool. And then I got to come back and perform for an audience, that's my favorite way to do comedy. You know, like,
Yeah.
I like this, but I like an audience. This is my favorite show right now. But when I perform for an audience of more than one person or three people, that's the best. I recommend it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then it just went well. Just I'd come from a place. I feel like the Boston comedy scene had a lot of really strong joke writers, like your Gary Goldmans and Wendy Liebmans and, Conans, and just jokes were revered. And I was good at writing short jokes so that I could just have a lot of jokes in a 2-minute set. And that's all you got for most of these shows, most of these, competitive sets. And it's, again, it is a competition, but it really allowed so many comedians to just shine, so many comedians on that. I'm really, really grateful for the show, even in the seasons where they did weird things, like, Gary Goldman succeeded on that show, and Todd Glass and Doug Benson and Kathleen Madigan, Amy Schumer and so many other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one thing that I really loved about it was there were still, I guess, some maybe holdovers, some remnants from, the reality show tropes where they would sit us down and like have, one-on-one interviews with us. And I remember them asking like, "Okay, if you had to go head to head with anyone, like, who do you think you're definitely funnier than?" And I really feel like all of us in the finals were like professional comedians of at least a few to many years. And we were all, none of us like bit. We were all like, in any sense of the word, if they asked me that, I'd be like, I mean, I love all of these people. Like, they're funny and they're my friends. And I don't think that comedy like can be judged like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Can you give us something else?" And like they really, I think everyone did that. Everyone was like, "This is a question that we're not going to validate."
Yeah.
So
Art is so subjective as it is. And then you're trying to get people to compare not only like I'm funnier than, but different comedy styles. Like no two comedians are exactly the same, which I mean, everybody kind of has their own voice, and
yeah.
trying to pit people against each other like that just doesn't really make a ton of sense. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was really lovely, for some of the comedians I knew already, and for some of the ones that I didn't, like, I became like closer with, some became really good friends with. And like, I think that was, it's like I went to this summer camp when I was a kid, the one that I mentioned. And in addition to like learning to love like music and the guitar there, like part of the very friend of mine whose guitar it was, like, we met when we were 12 or 13, And I'm in, it's more than 30 years ago, and he's still a good friend of mine. And I still have a few of my other like really good friends are people that I met in my early teen, mid-teen years at this summer camp. And like, it's a place where like they revered art, like, and it was about the process, not the product. The founder of the camp had studied with Maria Montessori. It was all about like doing what you wanted to do, like not on a schedule, not because you had to, not because you're assigned to, like, what do you love creating? And so that was a beautiful environment. And also, even on top of that, I think for me, what was more valuable was just these other creative, artsy weirdos. Like maybe like I didn't have the most friends in my school. Like I just moved and started at a new middle school, a new high school. And I felt like everyone at the summer camp was like these other misfits, who by everyone being a misfit fit, we all fit together as like, like an island, Isle of broken toys kind of deal.
Yeah.
And misfit toys, whatever the thing is, that's correct. That's the one that it was like. And yeah, we'll fix it in post. And so I honestly feel like comedy in general in my adult life has served a similar function to that summer camp. Like it was kind of like a summer camp like experience where it's like, oh wow, like all of these amazing comedians, amazing artists, amazing people. And like, not to say that I'm not good friends with every comedian, but there is something of a bond, like, and especially for like the kind of comedian that, that you, if you are away and you see other people who are your way, like, oh yeah, like, game
your tribe.
recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just really so the same way that I valued, the actual, like the creativity of my summer camp, and I loved doing stand-up on that show and getting people to see my stand-up on that show. Like some of the most fun stuff was off camera. Some of the most fun stuff was just being friends with other like-minded, aligned fellow human artist comedian, beautiful people.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. I love having, experiences like that where you connect and find a bond. And we've talked about it on our show. Me and the other guys on the show, we all met at a horror convention, and we've been friends since I want to say 2007, 2008, something like that. We've been, off and on, life happens and everything, but we've come back together, and now we do this show together. So
Amazing.
and yeah, we all had podcasts at the time, individual podcasts, and now we've kind of combined forces to be this other, mixtape, and we've now got a sister channel called the Movie Mix, and so it's all that kind of just the camaraderie of finding your people in the world that just I like that kind of thing. So
Thank you, man.
yeah,
Well, hey, man, you're a guy who likes the camaraderie of finding your people, and I'm a guy who likes the camaraderie of finding your people. Maybe the camaraderie is coming from inside the podcast.
it could be very
The
very well
real
could be.
treasure was the friends we made
made along
along the inside the house. Yeah. The real friendship was coming from inside the house. There it is. We got it on the second take.
Yeah. So you've got a couple of comedy specials out, ones that have been on Comedy Central, and you got the one on Amazon as well. Any way that you could direct people to finding those on each platform?
Sure. Thank you. So the Comedy Central half hour, I recorded, I think it came out in 2010, and I don't know where it is. So good luck finding it. But maybe it's on Paramount Plus. I don't know.
I was going to say, I think
yeah.
they have an app that is now streaming all that stuff. They just took all the rights for everything and just threw it on a streaming service.
Yeah. They paid me a good amount of money, but a flat amount of money. And now they do with it what they will. But I will say also, my very first, so 2010 is also the year that my very first comedy album came out, called Vegan Mind Meld. And pretty much everything that's in the 22-minute Comedy Central half hour is on that album, and there's more. So I recommend, I've got more albums than I do specials as well. So there's on your various streaming platforms, your Spotify's, your Apple Music's, your Amazon's, where they might be. There's at least, I think at this point, 6 different albums. And then in 2014, my first hour special came out. That's Small, Dork, and Handsome. That one is available on Amazon now. And then I do have a dry bar comedy special that's available through the Dry Bar Comedy app, which if you use the promo code Myq Kaplan on their website, you can get a free month of Dry Bar. See my special, which will only take you.
We'll put that right down there too. So.
Incredible. Yeah. So that one's called Live from the Universe, and came out just about a year ago. And so it's actually kind of like a cleanest, greatest hits of my first 5 albums or so. But yeah, if you're gonna start, yeah, I mean, feel free to start at the beginning. But the most recent album that I recorded that is available is called AKA. Came out a couple years ago. And it's, yeah, again, it's all the places. So, but that's the one that's closest to the kind of stuff that I'm doing these days. So feel free to listen backwards in order and see how I devolve. Turn back into a chimp and then a fish, and but yeah, not like the angel I am right now, having evolved from the, or an alien. I don't know what I am. Yeah. But yeah, so that's where you can find most of those things. Also, if you want to go through the portal of my website, that will direct you to most of them, or my social media can get you there, or my my Substack newsletter at myqkaplan.substack.com. But yeah, that's where you can find most of, and there's a new special coming that I will be recording in New York in August of 2024. So if you're listening and it's before that, and you want to be in New York on August 22nd, I'd love to have you at the taping of the next one.
All right. Yeah, we'll make sure to put all that stuff right down there at the bottom.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I got to give some credit to Jay on this one as well. He did a little bit more digging as far as your acting career.
Please.
He says that your finest role being that of an eyeball. Yeah. Do you enjoy acting, and is that something that you intend to pursue any further, or do you just want to, stay with the stand up, and like, how do you want to do that?
Thanks for asking. I love doing stand up. If I could, if I had to only do stand up, I mean, it wouldn't be a had to. I love it. I love getting to do stand up as the main career, the main job that I have. That particular acting gig was one that I'll say, I do enjoy acting more than I enjoy auditioning. And so when I get roles that, like, that's a role that a friend offered me. I didn't have to audition for the part of eyeball, or oiball, as if it's a Jewish eyeball. I didn't audition for the part of eyeball in that Haunted Mansion series. And another role that I'd say I will direct people to. Do you know Henry Phillips?
It's vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Henry is a dear friend of mine. He is a super funny comedian and a super talented musician. These days, you can check out he has a lot of web series, and he streams on Twitch. He has a web series called Henry's Kitchen, where he edits hilarious videos of him doing a cooking show. Theoretically, it's supposed to, like, it doesn't go well, but it goes poorly in beautiful, curated ways. So Henry is one of the funniest people I know. And he has made at least 2 movies. One called Punching the Clown, probably about 10 or maybe 10, 15 years ago at this point. It's so funny. And then he made a sequel to it that is called Punching Henry. I think these are probably on Amazon at this point, or I think it was originally called Still Punching the Clown, but they changed it to Punching Henry. In this, and he just offered me a part in that movie. So I play a guy named Zach who works at like a record label or a social media company, or I play a douchebag. It's a great stretch. I do a lot of real good acting to be super douchey. No comments, please. And it's so fun. There's so many other great comedians in it. Like, I think Doug Stanhope is in it. I think Sarah Silverman might be in it. J.K. Simmons, I believe Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons. Like, I'm in scenes with him. I had lunch with him.
Like the guy that was made to be J. Jonah Jameson.
Yes,
Like,
he is in this
yeah.
movie, and he is incredible. Like, so he's an actor. I'm a guy who is just happy to not be ruining the movie that J.K.'s like. I don't know that I could ruin a J.K. Simmons situation, but I did my best. And it's just such a funny movie. Henry's so funny. The movie's so funny. And this is all to say, I do not have specific plans to audition for many things. But if you have a project and you don't want me to audition for it and you want to pay me to be an actor, I would love to do it. But yeah, I love doing stand-up. I'm really fortunate that when I was a musician, when I was merely a singer-songwriter, the thing that I loved about playing music was that it was me. It was my music. I mean, I love singing karaoke. I mean, there's beautiful music out there that other people have written. I love that too. But there's something particularly special and noteworthy about writing a song and performing my own song, because I'm like, that's me. I'm me on stage being me.
Yeah.
And I have since, also understood like the art form of acting is a beautiful art form as well. And like when I've gotten to do it, it's fun to do. It's fun. It's work. It's work and fun. There's people who are putting in the work and, some varying combinations of nature and nurture that make people incredible actors. But when I started doing comedy, I was like, oh, this has the thing that music has, where I'm like, this is me. These are my songs. These are my jokes. These are my thoughts. These are my ideas. Like, I am the main, actor and director and writer and producer, along with my girlfriend, who I've been with for 8 years and also helps me a lot and contributes in writing and directing and costuming and many other aspects. Like this shirt was chosen by me, and the shirts that she chooses are better. And you know what they say, the costumer is always right. And good night, everybody. But you left the screen. Okay, great, perfect. Come back. And yeah, I just I love. It's funny. I'm like, I love that I am like, with acting, again, it's a beautiful skill. It's a beautiful art. It's a beautiful craft. The people that love it and want to do it and do it, like, I'm so happy that they do. I love taking in their work, and I love getting to do my version of it when I get to. But man, I'm like, I love doing me stuff because no one can tell me that I'm doing me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm doing me, like, this is how me goes. Like, I haven't thought about this in a little while. There's a story I heard about Johnny Rotten, I think,
Okay.
One of the most iconic,
Sex
punk
Pistols.
stars of all time. Yeah. And I think the Sex Pistols had I heard the story that they had a song that they let a commercial use it. So the Sex Pistols had a song in a commercial, and somebody asked, I think it was Johnny Rotten or maybe one of the other guys in the band. They were like, I think Johnny Rotten's the one who's still alive. I think it was him.
Yeah.
Somebody asked him, so Johnny Rotten, your song is in a commercial, kind of not punk, right? And he's like, whatever we do is punk. And I was like, well, that's pretty punk right there.
Yeah.
And so whatever I do is me. And I guess what I'm saying is I love me. So I love a lot of other people too.
Yeah.
Everyone really. But yeah, I love doing stand-up. But thank you for that deep cut of my part of eyeball. Like I did a lot of practice. I did a lot of research by having 2 eyeballs for most of my life. All of it, in fact, I think.
It was like most of it.
Yeah.
Lost one, got it back later on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends when you think life begins. I mean, in some sense, it began I didn't have one when I was just a glimmer in my father and or mother's eye, or the parts of me that were in. I didn't intend to come on the show and talk about my parents' gonads, but there we have it.
Oh,
Yeah. So thank you for asking. Love the concept of acting, love getting to do it, but just enjoy not having to, and not having to audition is that's my favorite part of acting.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap this up, we got a couple more questions.
Yes.
One, we've got our famous three questions, and then we have another one where we just basically,
A less famous
let people
question.
know,
Yes.
less famous question.
Yeah.
So our famous three questions we like to ask, and like I said before, uh, no answer is totally fine.
Mhm.
And for the third one, I'll kind of go into that a little bit more.
All right.
First, have you ever had any interaction with David Byrne from the Talking Heads?
No, and I've never even had a head that talks. Does that make any sense? Okay. No. Love the music. I've heard of them. Never interacted with the man.
Gotcha. Second question. Have you ever had the pleasure of meeting and or interacting with Weird Al Yankovic? And if so, do you have a story for that?
I have, and I do. It's a great delight that one of the times I was on Conan doing stand up, he was one of the guests.
Awesome.
And that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you get to meet the person because you have different dressing rooms and you're on at different times. Like I remember, I think Shirley MacLaine was on the Late Late Show when I did it once, and I did not meet Shirley MacLaine. Joey from Friends was on Conan once when I was on it, and I did not meet. I did take a picture in front of his dressing room. Or maybe I took a picture in front of an electric closet and said, but also Joey's here. Matt LeBlanc, I'll say his given name. But Weird Al, I've known Weird Al is one of the celebrities that I have known of for the longest in my life. Like, I don't remember when, I know that for sure. I was born in 1978, and like, certainly when I was like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, there were Weird Al songs that I knew, that I loved, that I listened to. And he is somebody who, I read this statistic, maybe statistic isn't the right word. I read this factoid. There are at least or only around 4 or 5 musical acts that have had a a top 40 hit or a top 40 album. I forget the thing. I got to look it up. But there's something. I think it's a top 40 hit in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s or teens. And
I've heard this similar thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the ranking is on that.
I
But
think
yeah.
it's U2, Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Weird Al. And it's incredible. And then there's like somebody else that I hadn't heard of who's, I think, maybe from the UK, but probably David Byrne. Anyway, if I ever meet him, I'll ask. And then we'll come back on the show. But yeah, so this is all to say, I think before I did Conan, the same time that Weird Al did, I had gone to, do you know Comedy Bang Bang?
Mhm.
Like Comedy Bang Bang used to be a live show, that happened every week in LA. And the final show of it, they did in a big theater. And I remember just going to watch, and I knew somebody who was there. And so I like got to hang out a little bit at an after party, and I saw Weird Al, and I feel like I probably went up to him and said, "I love everything you do." And so that was like my first, and he was like, "Thank you." That's my memory of the first time I talked to him, that I don't know that he would have, if you asked him at that point, do you have any stories about meeting Myq Kaplan? I bet would have said, here's the thing. At that point, I would have guessed that he would have said no. At this point, I now think differently, because when I was on Conan and he was on Conan, like, I forget if he came to my dressing room or if we just met in a common area, but we met, and he said that he liked my comedy. And I was like, that is, above and beyond.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't have a lot of experiences these days. I mean, I'm fortunate to get to meet a lot of my comedy heroes here and there and get to work with them sometimes. And it's still like to meet somebody who I hadn't met, who I look up to. Like it brings me back to like, oh my God, like the TV is talking to me, like
Yeah.
this is like UHF was the first movie that I bought with my bar mitzvah money. I purchased UHF and The Naked Gun with
That's a good double feature right there, actually.
It was and part of the reason was I'd heard of them and I had a $50 gift certificate and they each cost $25 at Tower Video. And this is 1991 or so. Some of the other movies, VHS cost like $88, $109. It didn't make any, it's so weird. But yeah, I was like, man, I know this guy. I love this guy. And now he knows me in this way. And he's a human being. In addition to the massive deal that he is he's a kind man and thoughtful and watched my set and gave me specific complimentary feedback that indicated that he had watched it, that he wasn't just saying good set while looking down at his phone. Like he engaged. And so I mean, I value it. I really appreciate it. And our paths have crossed since a few times as well. I got to see, his tour, the final date of his tour. I think it's now, must have been 2022, the end of October 2022. Emo Phillips opened for him at Carnegie Hall.
Oh man.
And it's one of the most amazing live experiences I've ever seen. Like even just the encore, if it was only the encore, but or if it was only any of it. So just he's a beautiful human and a beautiful art and artist. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, we have yet to have anybody say, yeah, I did, and he was awful. Everybody has had nothing but great things to say about him. And we've actually had his guitar player, Jim Kimo West, on the show in the past, and we're working on our way towards getting the man himself. So we're hoping for that.
This is like do you know the podcast Dead Eyes?
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it's limited. I think there's 3 seasons of it, and I don't think they've released any in the past years. I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay.
But Connor Ratliff is an actor and comedian. And his very first, he's probably about my age-ish. I'm 45. He's, I think, in his maybe between 45, 50. And when in the 90s, he auditioned for the very first thing out of acting school. He auditioned for Band of Brothers.
All right.
And he got it. He got a part in Band of Brothers. I think, is it produced by Spielberg?
I think
And the episode he was in was to be directed by Tom Hanks.
Oh my God.
And he got cast, he got costumed, he got haircut. And then the day before he was to go and shoot his one-line scene, he got a call and said that he was no longer in it. He was cut because Tom Hanks had seen his audition tape and said that he had dead eyes.
Oh no.
And so now, that was in the 90s, and he started this podcast just a couple years ago. So like 20 years later, like his life and career took a lot of different turns, and he came to it from a place, like you'll hear in the first episode, he is confident and secure and comfortable in his life. He has a good career. He's been in a lot of things. He's super funny, super successful. And at this point, he's just like, and I'm just curious, like, what happened? How did that happen? Like, that shouldn't have happened. Like, even if they cut, like, they shouldn't have told, like, what? And then he goes on this really, rollicking romp, talking to other people about their Dead Eyes like stories, and,
oh my God.
And striving to ultimately find out if he could find out from Tom Hanks if he did say that and why.
Okay.
So tune in next time to every episode of Dead Eyes.
I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds
anyway. So
very
that's what you're doing
intriguing.
here with Weird Al.
Yeah.
Even though, but it's the opposite because he didn't say anything mean to anybody. You're like, is it true that you are very nice and would never have told anyone that they had dead eyes?
Yeah. That'll be one of the 3 questions we ask him on that one.
Perfect.
So, and our third question, which I did not lead up to at all.
I know nothing about it.
You know nothing about it. So this one is a kind of 2-part question. First, if you were a Muppet, which Muppet would you be and why? The second part of that question, which technically is third because I worded things weirdly. This does not have to be one individual Muppet. It can be a combination of Muppets.
I'm glad. Thank you. Even if you didn't say that, I would have given you a lot of Muppets. So the first one that sprung to mind is animal, because I am an animal and I am a musician. Oh man, I just watched the first episode of Muppet Mayhem, the newest Muppet show that follows Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. God, they are magical. It's beautiful. Like, so I feel like there's elements of the whole band in there, but animal, maybe because of the hair right now. And then Gonzo was maybe my next one, because I am also a weirdo. Kermit, because I like to think of myself as like the star and MC of my own life show, as you heard earlier. Yeah, I think Scooter, because I have glasses, and one of Gonzo's chicken friends, because I also am chicken sometimes. I mean, I feel like, sometimes with my girlfriend is has been well versed in astrology at times, and came to a place where she knows so much about it that she could tell you why you are any sign. You could be because we all have aspects. We all are every sign. And so that is a work of her genius that is on its way. So if you want, pretty soon you'll be able to find out why you are any of the signs that you aren't or are. And similarly, I think that I am all Muppets, but definitely, I'm Sweetums because I'm sweet, and sometimes I say and that's what Sweetums is all about, being sweet and saying certainly I've got some Statler and Waldorf in me. No, you don't. Okay. And I'm probably, I'm Miss Piggy because I took some karate lessons at one point. I don't know. They're all there. Those are my answers that spring to mind immediately. I guess I'm like, what if I was like, I'm everyone but Fozzie, because I don't tell jokes. Waka audience. That's why he says waka waka, because he's just walking the audience every time. I got some Foz there as well, and that's what I would say.
Ironically, I don't think we've ever had anybody say Fozzie. Now that you mentioned that, that's kind of strange.
Well,
it's weird. We get a lot of musicians saying animal or Rolf. We've had Rolf too,
of course. Yeah.
But that's always our fun one, and
love it.
Yeah. So one last thing before we let you go. What are you currently up to? Give people the rundown of, you said you got a special coming up, and where people can find you.
Sure. I kind of did that already, but I'll reiterate. At Myq Kaplan everywhere, Myq Kaplan, on social media, my website, my Substack newsletter, myqkaplan.substack.com. My podcast is called Broccoli and Ice Cream. I have another one called The Faucet. I have a Patreon that goes with one, so you can get the broccoli for free, and often the ice cream it's right down there. Yeah. And that is artwork by my friend Ramin Nazer, who is incredible. Check out his stuff.
Which, by the way, not to cut you off, but you have a book out with him as well. And
100%.
Checking that out a little bit before we got on, and it looks very entertaining.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I was about to say, and will now say, Ramin, I've worked with him variously. He's done a lot of logos for me. But yeah, last year we together created a book where he has illustrated my jokes. Every page, a joke of mine and beautiful artwork by him. And it's called Heartbrain Art Train, available at my website and his. And I just got his newest book that I'll show right here, is called Full Energy Recharge. And it is, I mean, jam-packed with beautiful, hilarious, philosophical, artistic, creative stuff. So yeah, check that book out. And then again, if you're gonna do anything with my do everything, but if you're gonna do anything, come see me live. I am taping my newest special August 22nd, 2024. And I will be, if I remember correctly, where I don't know, probably your listeners could be everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will be in Cincinnati on September 12th, 2024, and Columbus the night before at the Funny Bones. And so if you're near there, I would love to have you at those shows. And if you're in New York on August 22nd, I'd love to have you at the taping of my new special. And then otherwise, if you're not anywhere near where I ever am or are going to be, the internet, find my stuff on your streaming platform of choice. My recent, and there's a few albums also that are only available on Sirius satellite radio. So get that as, if you want to be a completist, get that as well.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. It's been great talking to you. And until next time, everybody, remember to always stay awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the mixtape. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the bell icon for notifications when new videos come out. And remember to always stay awesome.